Hello, it's your Story Master Andrew here. Just a quick message to say that if you are enjoying the show, we'd really appreciate it if you subscribed on YouTube or followed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We'd really love to continue making relaxing fantasy experiences, and we can't do it without your support. Genuinely, thank you so much to everyone who's listened so far, and I hope you enjoy episode 2. Welcome to The Kingdom Sleeps, a fantasy bedtime story decided by the roll of dice. My name's Andrew, and I'll be your story master for this evening.
Hey there, and my name's Tom, and I will be playing the role of Yohm.
For those of you who aren't familiar with tabletop role-playing games, the concept is very simple. Tom and I will be improvising a story this evening, and occasionally we'll roll a dice to see where that story goes. It's as simple as that.
And for those of you who are familiar with DnD podcasts, if you're looking for something with just as much adventure and narrative, but maybe a little bit more chilled out to help you relax before bed, or indeed fall asleep, then we're hoping this is the podcast for you.
The Kingdom Sleeps is set in the fantasy realm of Sopros, a vast continent formed over the back of a sleeping giant. The dreams of the Colossus, known as the Mamu, roam the vast and otherworldly landscape and have shaped the lives and culture of the people that live there. If you'd like to hear more about the lore of Sopros, you can begin by listening to episode 0. Tom, would you like to tell us a little bit about your character, Yohm?
Yeah, of course. Now, Yohm is a member of the merfolk peoples, though he was born and raised in the desert region, Shuna, which is on the southernmost tip of Sopros. Now, living a nomadic lifestyle, he grew to become quite a respected guide, and he'd make a living by shepherding different members of each of the guilds across the harsh sands. Now, he's gaunt and weathered, but he still holds quite an aquatic aura about his person, though this is usually quite hidden by the very vibrant robes that he likes to drape himself in.
And with that, make yourself comfortable and join us where the kingdom sleeps. Last we left our intrepid desert guide Yohm. He'd just spent the night leading a group of miners from the Harvesters Guild to a remote mining location in the Shwertsuna Desert. And you'd gotten very near your intended destination when one of the fresh-faced miners had taken ill by the heat, and you decided that it was best to set up camp for the night. And during the night, you had extremely vivid dreams of memories from your past, followed by a striking vision of a great spirit creature of sorts that besought your help. And after these incredibly vivid imaginings of the night, now you find yourself waking up quite sharply. The first thing you feel in yourself is the warmth of the desert and the humidity within your tent, and the night has drained you a little bit, and you've got a bit of a pounding headache, and your eyes feel sore, much like having spent a day travelling through harsh winds of sands coming through your eyes almost. You've got this like sting in the corners. And then the first thing you see as you begin to stir is that bright, gleaming light just poking through the tent opening, glazing across your eyes and just increasing that sort of stingy pain and uncomfortableness. And the first thing you hear as your senses fully return to you is this tumult outside, this noise of agitated whispering and stomping feet through the sand. Sometimes boisterous yelling between some of the young miners outside, and it seems like there's some sort of a commotion going on outside, and you're not given very much time to come back fully to your senses and the waking world before your tent door slides across and the face of Ren greets you there and blocks out that sun that was just striking you in the face. And you see Ren standing there, his quite agitated face, looking very grim. He stares at you right where you lay, saying, "Yohm, we have a bit of a situation outside. You better get up, quickly."
Alright, yeah, I'm doing it.
And as soon as he said this, he turns right around and leaves you to wake up. What's the first thing you do?
Just inevitably going to give a bit of a rub down of his face and his eyes, see if he can alight some of that stinging sensation somewhat, and inevitably very quickly just throws on his boots and his big old sort of cloak over his top, because he still doesn't like to show himself too much in these parts. Drapes himself head to toe yet again and runs on out the tent door.
So Yohm does this very quickly, getting yourself together, and as soon as you brush past that tent door, immediately it's almost difficult to see what's going on through the rushing crowds of these miners, hastily pacing about almost without purpose. It seems like there's so many more of them than there actually are because of the vivid agitation that's happening in front of you. So as soon as you have a chance to get yourself together, you step on up, push back your tent door, and immediately are greeted by this buzzing hive of the young miners darting to and fro with hesitation, and it's so distracting at first that it takes you a second to notice the cause of this commotion, which is just off over the brow of the hill under which you've made your encampment. And to your surprise, there is this creature, a Mamu to your estimation, but so much larger than anyone you've seen this close in the desert. It looms over your encampment. It's this huge, almost serpent-like head that sits with its chin to the ground of the desert and almost looks over your encampment. And the first most striking thing about it is the stark anger and discomfort and agitation in the expression of this serpentine face. Very unlike a yellow Mamu you might have seen before. Very unlike the ones you saw last night. You know them to be playful. You know them to be little tricksters. This is this huge, perhaps the size of a 3-story building, towering over your encampment. And you can see just up ahead a very concerned Ren wringing his hands together, looking up at this Mamu with a small crowd of young miners just around him, trying to agitatedly give him advice or yell their frustrations towards him. And you have to make your way through the crowd of agitated miners a little bit to get to Ren. But as you move past them and do, you can just see him staring up, and he's almost unaware of your presence, with worry as he stands there.
And as I creep up behind him, I suppose, I just reach out and put an arm on his shoulder off the bat. Ren, remember, you're not alone. Whatever this is, we'll solve it together. And take a deep breath as it's probably quite clear to Ren at least that I'm putting on a little bit of bravado here myself in a otherwise very strange and potentially intense situation.
So this, usually quite stout and stern Ren actually gives a bit of a jump at your first hand on the shoulder. You see his whole dwarga, stone-like body almost like ripple through itself with the shock. But when he sees your face and he hears your words, he takes that deep breath with you and tries to take his own courage from the bravado that you're putting on.
And as soon as he calms down a second, I call out, not too loud, but to the men around us. Miners, steel yourselves. This creature means us no harm. And then I turn back to talk to Ren directly, a little bit quieter. Now, friend, what do you see on his face?
I see anger. This does not look good. Have you seen anything like this before?
Only on injured animals. Never on a Mamu. Never on anything like this.
Well, my intuition would say that we should leave immediately. But it seems this creature is directly on top of our sleds. And you can in fact see that it is directly on top of where last night you parked your sleds. The houndbacks having stepped away from this big creature. And they seem to be actually quite unfazed by it. But have moved themselves away.
Now, tell me, Ren, was this here when we arose? Or did one of you see it arrive?
It was here when the first miner awoke. We all woke up, a few of us woke up at the same time, and it was just here, staring at us.
It still is. Yohm's going to, with Ren sort of under his arm still, just slowly start pacing side to side, no more than, 5-10 feet or so. Keeping sort of visuals on the giant head and seeing if it pays us much attention as we move or if it's just surveying the landscape.
So as you take these gentle paces back and forth, you do in fact notice that these big, dark, inky black eyes, with its characteristic hexagonal pupils, are in fact almost surreptitiously trying to watch your movements, as if it doesn't want you to know. It cares quite deeply what you're doing.
Bizarre. Now, Ren, I assure you this creature means us no harm, but I am getting the feeling it might be interested in one of us here. Here, let me try something. Hold back. And I quickly skirt back to my tent very quickly and pop back out again after just grabbing one or two things and keeping eyes on this creature the whole time, making sure nothing drastic changes whilst I do so. And I'm going to pull out a couple of the strands of whistleweed that I gathered from last night, the ones that were presented to me by some yellow Mamu. And for whatever reason, I'm going to try and, where I was standing before, place these little bits of whisperweed in the sand and then cover them up, bury them slightly. And then I'm going to swift around the sand, shuffle it, make it waves, like almost like a game of cups, and swizzle it around and then pause for a moment, almost presenting my game to this giant Mamu and seeing if there's any sort of feedback.
So as you grab your whistleweed and begin this intricate, playful dance of the sand, trying to imitate what you saw yesterday evening, you can see this very stern expression of the serpentine face begin to watch you inquisitively, and as you do, its expression softens just a little, and you can actually start to see the inky blackness of its eyes begin to gradually, subtly fade back to a palish yellow that you're more familiar with, and seems intrigued. And as you finish, you dance with your hands and look up, wait for its reaction. It almost hesitates and quivers for a second before becoming rigid once more, and its eyes flushing back to inky blackness and watching you very carefully. And just as you do this, one of the miners from the back of the crowd pushes their way forward and comes straight towards Ren, and it's a face that you recognize, one that you saw last night, of the young Fey gentleman. You remember being called Kiren. And he steps forward with a very self-righteous posture and waves a finger towards Ren and says, "This is ridiculous. Why are we giving this creature any credence? We should be attacking it, getting rid of it now."
And Yohm would definitely bite his lips a little at hearing that, first of all, before taking another breath again and replying in a better manner than Kiren deserved. "And in which matter of battle do you think you can accomplish this feat, huh? You'd soon have more luck slaying a waterfall, felling a mountain. You know nothing of these creatures, do you?"
"I know enough of battle and how to get things done."
Very much query that. Now look at this thing. These Mamu, they're closer to a force of nature than a living creature that you can fight with. It isn't angry. It doesn't want to attack. It is missing its nature. Can you not see that? Did you see the moment? They're curious creatures. They like to play. If we can bring it back once more, bring it back to itself, then maybe it will be gone.
"I don't have time for your speak of hocus pocus. I will not be stopped in my workings by any force of nature." And he steps right forward, past you and past Ren, and stands boldly, somewhat ignorantly, in front of this large serpentine head and says, "You there, beast. You will be gone now, and you will return our things so we may leave, or I will pass fury upon you." And just in that moment, you see very sharply this slithering tongue, much like a snake's, reel out of the mouth, very, very subtly open mouth of this serpentine Mamu head, whoosh, curl and grip right around Kiren. He is yanked inside the mouth of this thing, and he has not time but for a very small yelp before he is consumed into the mouth, and the miners surrounding all let out sharp gasps, and there is more tumult and more pacing around, and certain numbers of them are beginning to collect their things and come further back from this serpentine creature, just staring. And Ren is now standing with jaw open and looks to you and says, "He means us no harm. What do we do, Yohm?"
"I wish I knew. Just stay calm. Men, stay calm. Okay, it only did this when Kiren provoked it. Move back slowly and steadily. And pray." And then begin with Ren as well, but I maintain the slowest pace, so I want to be the closest one to this creature as we try to back off slightly, steadily, trying to get some distance and watching for any reaction that it gives.
And as you give the word to all the miners to back up, and you yourself slowly step away, and you can see these 20 or so young people sort of bending their knees and very gently backing away, a lot of fear in their eyes. You can see this Mamu almost seems to gain a confidence, seems to gain a bravado almost, and it rises ever so slightly, revealing a little bit of its neck and what would appear to be much, much more of a longer serpentine body underneath the sand beneath it. But it doesn't go too much further, just rises up out of the sand a little bit. And then you see it begin to open its mouth slowly wide and wide. And then you see this almost like a vacuum of air come from the back of its head into an opening. And then it's almost as if to blow out a burst of air. It blows through its mouth, and this wind is produced from the vacuum from behind, and you're all taken aback, some of which the miners are blown onto the floor by this large gust of wind that kicks up sand and knocks over some tents, almost as if it's trying to get you to keep doing what you're doing. And as it finishes blowing, this large opening in its mouth shuts up, and it sits back into the sand. And you're all a little bit further back than you once were, and your camp is in a little worse for wear.
And frantic breathing going on, trying to stay calm in the face of potential certain death. And Ren, you're not going to like this, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And you're going to have to take your boys with you.
I am not going to like that, you're correct. There's one of my men in there. Where will I go? I cannot return to the guild without one of my men.
Yeah, let me figure that one out, but at this rate, we might not be returning to the guild at all. So, please get your men and go.
Yohm, we have no sleds. We only have the houndbacks. We cannot travel by ourselves.
You can. Trust them. They will find somewhere safe. And no matter what, I'll be able to find them. Now go. Slowly, calmly, still, but go. I cannot tell you why, but this creature, it wants something to do with me.
Ren stares up at you. His little hunched over, rockish form gawps at your face in utter shock, but he's hearing your words. He stares into your face as you say these words. And you see this look of confusion for a moment as he looks really deeply into your eyes. And then almost drops the thought that he had and comes back to where he is in the situation. It's almost as if he had a small daydream in your eyes themselves. But he comes back to his senses.
There's no time for farewells, Ren. I will find you. Leave.
Okay. You make sure you find us. And he turns around to the young miners. You heard what he said. Slowly, carefully. Let us head to the south. Go. And he himself picks up the things in the bags that surround him, very carefully gathers together his men, and they all make their way slowly over the duned hill towards the south, leaving their encampment. And as they do, you can see Ren, every so often, looking over his shoulder back at you, not really wanting to leave you, but... And just before they make it over the hill, you see Ren shuffling his way back down the hill, over towards you. He says, "Don't worry, I will go. I will heed your word, but please, take this. You may need it more than I will." And out of his small satchel at his side, he hands you this round, polished, very bright piece of bright stone. Almost lens-like in its shape, its convexness. And in the center of it is this exquisitely carved, rune-like looking symbol. He says, "I was gifted this by a friend from one of the other guilds. It is the gift of illumination. I have not yet used it, but it is meant to make bright what is dark.
No.
Make seen what is unseen."
I've heard the legend. Fine. I guess you've got the same bad feeling I do, don't you?
Oh, I hope I am wrong.
Me too. Now go. Don't look back.
We will see you soon, Yohm.
No. And then I turn to face the serpent once more and begin arcing around in a not completely opposite direction that the miners went, but trying to steer the attention of the creature away from the people leaving and focusing purely on me alone.
And as you hear the hurried footsteps of Ren dart off over the hill and you make your movements, you can see pretty clearly that it is very much mostly interested in yourself and where you happen to be moving. And as you move from left to right and try and grab its attention, and you get just that little bit closer than you were before, you can see it begins to stiffen more and feel once again more threatened. And its mouth begins to open up wide again, and this vacuum of air begins to plume behind it, and you can see that it's about to try and do the same thing it did before to get you away from it, and its mouth opens and opens wider.
Get ready with my staff in hand, plant it deep into the sand, as deep as I can muster, root my legs down. I will hold fast.
As you pound your staff into the ground and this air begins to almost flow through you into the mouth of this serpent. Its mouth expands, and once again a rush of air flows right past you like a mighty storm, and you're almost knocked back off your feet, gripping hard onto your staff. The wind and the sand blowing up into your eyes, almost knocking your cloak off. But you remain rigid, exactly where you are. And you can see almost a grimace on the face of this serpent in frustration.
At this point, the heart is pounding, blood is pumping, and determination set in. As much as this man might not be worthy of saving, I cannot let a friend down. So after the last bellow from this serpent, I pick myself up and I take another step forward. and another, and another. As far as I can go, as close to this creature as it will allow me.
And as you begin to take those steps forward, you can see this Mamu getting more and more rigid, and its brow furrowing, and you can almost feel its seething energy until you're very close to the Mamu. Closer now even than Kiren was when he first accosted it. And with dark, black, inky eyes staring directly at you, not 10 feet away, this sharp tongue unfurls from the mouth and comes straight towards you. Roll me dexterity.
This is hopefully something Yohm's quite good at, and that will be a 22.
As the tongue unfurls and darts towards you as fast as a wild animal would, Yohm's keen reflexes, attuned to the fast movements of the desert, sees it coming in a flash, and you just manage to roll yourself out of the way of this tongue, which goes on for some 20 feet behind you and snaps back into the mouth of this creature, who is at first startled and then very, very upset. And its eyes turn to fix on where you rolled away to, and its mouth opens up again, and it begins to raise itself out of the ground, and its jaw opens so wide and comes right above Ren's head, towering over and blocking out the shining sun that beats down on him. And you can see its eyes moving sharply like a very enraged wild animal, and sharply comes down to the ground and right over the top of Yohm. Roll me a dexterity, though this won't go well for Yohm.
That one's a 7.
This certainly will not. This large serpentine head, with its teeth jagged, comes crashing down on top of Yohm, and Yohm is plunged into darkness, and as all the sand is kicked up into the air and all over his body, it seems to settle on the ground, and suddenly, in this pitch blackness, you feel very cold. The heat of the desert has dissipated, and it's almost as if you've suddenly found yourself in some kind of underground cavern. It's that sort of chill and deep, deep darkness you find yourself in. And the only light that you can see is that of the bright stone that happens to be on you, but it's so dull that you can only see inches from where it is on your person. Otherwise, you stand on a sandy ground in a pitch black, cool, dark, cavernous space.
He breathes for a second and wonders whether or not he's still alive. Upon realising that he definitely is, clutches that bright stone rune that Ren just gave him oh so deeply, and holds it to his chest. And then tries, because he's never used one of these before, tries to activate its magic.
So as you grab that stone and focus on its energy that it seems to be giving you, and you feel that bounce back, that reverberation of energy comes back. Roll me a d20 to see its effectuality.
18.
As you focus on this stone, the stone itself begins to get brighter and brighter until it starts to expand its illuminating power. And the light that emanates from it seems to ripple across the environment around you. And as it does so, you find yourself somewhere very unexpected. The light almost slinks rapidly across the floor like spilt ink, along the floor and up the walls of this new place you find yourself in, and it trickles along and up plants and flowers that open up, and up the trunks of trees with large pine-like boughs that droop down over your head, and up and over along the walls of stony, stalactitey, cavernous cliff faces almost on either side of you, but they carry on up and over your head, and you find yourself in some kind of cave-like entrance way, covered in foliage, a bed of flowers and a bed of grasses and tall trees that loom over your head, almost as if you're in some kind of dream-like forest, a place that you've only really heard about and very rarely been to. But everything around you seems very dreamlike. These plants, these flowers, these trees, they don't seem solid or real. They exude this iridescent kind of wavering texture, almost as if they were spirit-like in form. But if you knelt down to touch something, you find that it is tangible, but oh so dreamlike. And ahead of you is a fairly clear forest path that leads to a smaller entranceway to another part of this cavern. And behind you, you can see this stony dead end, really, that looks distinctly like the closed mouth of a snake with its teeth interlocked.
And just look around for a moment in this initial chamber and look behind me, specifically for any signs of Kiren, first of all, before getting too lost in the just alien nature of my environment. And then we're soon to go and, just like you mentioned, try and grab some of this plant life, see if I can, pick up a branch from one of the trees if the rocks will crumble under my touch. Testing if this is, the reality that I know.
So a quick scan around for Kiren, or indeed anyone else in the space, proves fruitless. You do appear to be fairly alone in this forest-like place. As you begin to test the environment around you, pick up a flower, and you can feel the roots of it coming away, and as you do it, it feels very much like pulling a flower out of the ground, but as you hold it in your hand, it begins to slightly wilt and wither, and it gets thinner and more textureless in your hand until eventually the flower fades away like steam almost.
What strange creations. No one will believe a thing about this. He kind of harkens back to his younger days, when the world seemed like this, seemed unreal and unknowable, and almost ever so closely feels a hint of excitement and drum up in him. That determination refreshing itself once more. For someone who has always wandered, the path ahead seems perfectly clear. He holds that stone tightly in his left arm, his staff in his right. Final look around the now slammed shut mouth of this serpent, just really letting the image soak in. And then he marches down towards that small passageway in the search for Kiren.